On the 8th of December, his men said, "Can they move that friggin' tank?" He wouldn't have said friggin', by the way. Colonel, would you get him to move the goddamn tank? Anyway, he was going to leave, and his chief of staff said, "Look, you got Sunday. What do you want to do?" I hadn't planned to do anything. Why don't we go pheasant hunting? So they're going to go to Mannheim, go pheasant hunting, but they weren't sure when. So when the driver got in from partying that night, it was harsh wintering. He went to sleep. He had about a couple hours of sleep. He gets a phone call that says, "We're going pheasant hunting. Warm up, Patton's car." Oh, so he gets in there. They get a weapons carrier and they get a weapons carrier and a dog, and they head toward Mannheim. It's cold as it can be. So they get on the German Autobahn, and there was a castle they wanted to go see, and they stopped and looked at the ruins. Then he went down the road a little piece. He wasn't far from a general friend of his, and he checked in with that friend, and he wasn't there. So then he went down. Now think about it. They didn't know they were going. They didn't know where they were going. They stopped at two places that nobody knew, not even themselves. When they got to Mannheim, it was under construction. They were engineers moving everything, and they had to swing around places because you couldn't go straight because it was a bombed out place. They got to a railroad track. That man was a sergeant and a corporal now. Excuse me, General, sir. You'd think they'd run this war the way I want to run it. Anyway, so it was the Russians. Yeah. All right, anyway, so now they're in Mannheim. And they're weaving through. They don't know why they're going up the side to go look for a place in London. And they're not a spec. Nobody knows they're going. They didn't know they're going. So they get to a railroad track, and as they cross over the railroad track, Sergeant Thompson, I know his name, I have his picture, was a deuce and a half driver and took a left turn. And he turned right into Patton's Cadillac. Patton was sitting in the back seat. He was thrown forward, and he hit a plexiglass glass area that had a rim around it, not in the front seat, but in the back seat of the petition. Yeah. And he cut his head all the way to the bone. And when he did, he broke his neck. And he fell back into Hap Gay's arms. And he says, "Hap, I can't move my fingers, or my fingers moving." He realized he was paralyzed, but he could talk. And he looked up, and he knew that the truck driver was in anguish for having done it. He's the highest ranking officer in Europe at that time. He was running the whole thing. He was getting ready to go, but he was running it. Ike was gone, and Bradley was gone. So he's the highest ranking officer, and he knew they were going to barbecue that truck driver, and he knew it was an accident. So he says, "Look," told the MP who got there, "do not investigate this. It's an accident, pure and simple. He didn't mean to do it." Well, there was an ambulance close. They grabbed it. The MPs flagged it down. He was taken to Heidelberg to the 130th hospital. They immediately saw his condition. They moved an X-ray machine, which was a huge contraption, several flights down. They didn't want to move him, and they put him and they cut his uniform off, and very gradually took X-rays of him. They had specialists there, and they got the best specialists they could, but they wasn't the best. So they called back to Washington. Eisenhower heard of it, Marshall heard of it. They sent a man named Colonel Sperling down. Colonel Sperling was the best of the best. He was supposed to get out, and they grabbed him. Not yet. He got Beatrice, Patton's wife, and they flew in the midst of winter to Heidelberg. The general of the 7th Army, who was a good friend of Patton's, cordoned off the entire hospital where nobody could go in. Other press reporters, other generals, nobody. Then he cordoned off the hallway, and then he cordoned off the hospital room, and there was 2 MPs there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the only people allowed in the hospital, and they had in the hospital room, and there had to be somebody there at all times with either a nurse or a doctor or both. Then they began to monitor him. They thought they saw a twitch in one of his toes, but they weren't sure. So they put clutch field devices, which are spikes, and fish hooks, into his head, and they tightened him up so he would be prone, hopefully that if he stayed there long enough, that if there was some mending to do, he might regain some feeling in his legs. It didn't work. Most of the doctors who examined him were absolutely sure he was going to die. It just wasn't sure when, because that accident should have killed most men, but Pat was in good shape. So he lingered and he lingered. Beatrice would come in and she would read to him, and he would get coughing spells. So they decided that he's liable to break something loose, so they put a plaster cast around him all the way down, and he was plaster cast like this. And Beatrice would still read to him and feed him, and he began to get a little bit weaker. And as this went on the 9th of December, his wife had been reading to him, and he was tired. So he began to close his eyes and go to sleep. And so his wife put the book down, and she went outside with Hap Gay. They were maybe 4 or 5 feet down the hallway, and the nurse noticed that he had quit breathing and called him back in. And he'd gone. He'd gone in his sleep. She knew why he died. She said, we don't need an autopsy to cut him open and tear up his body. We know why he died. So that was the end of that. Now, there was rumors that people were trying to kill him at one point or other. She was aware of it. You probably don't know who Frederick Eyre was. Frederick Eyre Jr. was her nephew, who was her brother's son. Now, his job was bureau chief for counterintelligence for the FBI in the European theater, assigned to Eisenhower, and he loved his Uncle Georgie. So guess who you would be thinking would go and investigate anything after the war concerning his favorite uncle? And he actually wrote a book called The Colors, Before the Colors Fade after that. So there was absolutely zero conspiracy in the minds of anybody for another 20 years. And then there was an OSS officer who stood up at a drunken party at the reunion and said, well, Gentleman Donovan paid me $10,000 to kill Patton. Well, General Donovan was head of the OSS, and he was a Medal of Honor winner, and he was a good friend of Patton's, and he was dead at the time. So, so then they took that story and they wrote a book called The Brass Target. Then they made a movie out of it. Then they made another movie, then another one. And then Bill O'Reilly come by. He needed to kill something else off, so he picked on Patton. But even he, and I read the book, doesn't say that anybody killed him. He said if anybody did, it might have been the Russians. But Patton was not killed by anybody. No rubber bullet, none of this stuff. It was an accident. I'm tired. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have a sergeant from the 761st Tank Battalion would like to meet you.
Sure. Yeah, it's working for sale right there.
Corporal now.
Sergeant Perry.
Oh, 761st. Do you remember me telling you about the Black Battalion that was going around in circles?
Yeah.
Well, we pride ourselves in all that we do and taking history seriously. So you're representing what they called back then the Negro race, what we call today black, and what I call goddamn good soldiers. And he's keeping their history alive.
Cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me show you something. What was the 761st? Tell me about it.
The 761st was an all-black tank battalion. They mostly trained in the States because they didn't think that they were good enough to go overseas. So most of their time was spent here just training. And so when they were sent overseas, they just cream of the crop.
They do what
destroyed everything.
One of the highest decorated units of any tank battalion. They had ribbons and medals and distinguished service crosses and Purple Hearts, and the men soon forgot what color they were. They could have cared less. They were fellow soldiers, and they carried on tradition. And it's this kind of history that must be told, and must be told often. We have heroes in America for generations after generations, and we don't forget any of them. So let's give them a hand. Thank you for the impression, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And you were a bunch of goddamn good takers, too. You know what he told them? He says, all eyes are looking on you. You're in my army. Don't you dare let me down. And they did.
Yeah, you can find 761st Tank Battalion on the web. There's a lot of history out there, and there are some books written.